Hey, everybody, this is Al, and I am in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA. And sitting to my left is the amazing Amber Rose. Good evening, Amber Rose.
Good evening,
How are
Al.
you? You've got tea, but Jason and I have a bottle of Cabernet. Yep, here it is. Got to go for some Cabernet. Whoa, there's not much left. All right, good.
Wellness.
You get the rest of it.
I'm advocating
All right, and
for wellness.
to my right, and he's been, I think it's been a couple of webcasts since we've seen him, but I'm so happy to have him back. Of course, there's Jason. Hey, Jason, how are you? You want to bring that closer to you? And we have, in the Hangouts, we have Max McKenna, who's in Chicago tonight, I believe.
I am in Chicago tonight. Hi,
How
Al.
are you, Max? Zach,
doing
can
well.
you
How
move
are
that stand? You're really making things hard for me. And we have Erica Kaufman in the beautiful Hudson Valley, where the I believe the colors must be kind of peaking.
Yeah, they're sort of changed.
Yeah, that's such a great spot. Right on the Hudson River, you are. Yeah, that's such a great spot. It was a little warm there today, I imagine. And we have in the beautiful Pioneer Valley of Massachusetts, we have Joe Massey. Hey, Joe.
Good evening, everybody.
We wish you were back here. Can't you just move here?
I'm thinking about it.
Okay. Well, we would love to
Not
have
really.
you here. It's a kind of an existential question. Sorry to throw that at you. We have
okay.
Anna Strong-Safford, she's so excited. Little things make her excited. And
This is not a little thing. This is a major upgrade at the phone station.
okay, she's
This
got
is a
these
headset.
ridiculous headphones.
Wow.
And I don't know why
Check
that
you
is.
out.
I do know why that is, because next week, not Wednesday, but Thursday at 6:30 London time. London time, 6:30. And I know, Amber Rose, what time is it going to be here?
Not
Does anybody know?
Because that's London time.
6 hours. I don't know. Anyway, the point is, I hope that Amber Rose, you're going to be in a little box there. Yeah.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, they're 5 hours ahead of us.
Yeah.
So it'll be 1:30, and I'll be on the box.
Okay. So, and everybody's going to, so we're going to do a regular webcast a week from tomorrow,
Oh my God.
Thursday. And what's going to happen is we're going to have a room full of like 70 Londoners and people from Glasgow and people from Zurich, and people are traveling all over. It's going to be great. And you guys, you're all going to call in. It's just going to be like a regular, I don't know how, but Zach is going to bring, and Chris are going to bring cameras, and it's going to be amazing. Anyway,
I can't wait to be virtually present
in London.
in London.
It's going to be good. So Joe, Eric, and Erica and Max are in the Hangouts. These two are here. And we have a fourth seat, and we're going to rotate some people around. We have, first of all, coming to us from California, the amazing, much aforementioned Joyce Pope, Mama Pope. Say hello to Mama Pope. There she is. So Joyce came and she did her tender meatballs. Anna, can you bring that down just a little bit? Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you're getting used to this setup. Joyce brought her tender meatballs, and it was fantastic, and she's hung around for like 3 days, and maybe there's more meatballs tomorrow. Tom and Dave are here. Tom, I can't really see you. Are you hiding purposely? Okay. And Dave is here. And we have, Eric is here, and it's so great to have you here again, and I hope you'll spend a little time with us at the table. And we have a special guest, Amelia Klein, who's a professor of English at my alma mater, Colgate University. Amelia Klein, snaps for Amelia. This is great, and I hope you won't mind taking a turn up here as well. So what I want to do is start with just a couple of shout-outs, and then we're going to get started with your questions. We are in week 3. The poems we're going to talk tonight: H.D.'s Sea Rose, H.D.'s Sea Poppies, Ezra Pound's Station of the Metro, Wallace Stevens' 13 Ways of Looking at Blackbird, William Carlos Williams' 2-line poem, Lines. I don't know if we'll talk about that. Williams' Between Walls. Jason, can you do a Williams? Between Walls, the back wings of the hospital.
Unfortunately from South Jersey.
Okay. Well, Williams was from Jersey, but from North Jersey. Yeah, that's true. All right. Williams, This Is Just to Say. Williams' Red Wheelbarrow. Williams' The Rose is Obsolete. What a great poem. Utterly, fabulously incomprehensible. I hope nobody asks about that one. Williams' Portrait of a Lady, which is really interesting, kind of anti-portraiture. and 2 Marcel Duchamp items, Nude Descending a Staircase and Fountain. Those are the topics today. There's also a bunch of ModPo Plus that I'm sure we'll get into. But a couple of shout-outs before we get started. First of all, someone who goes by Disruptive Classrooms on Twitter.
I like that.
Disruptive Classrooms wrote, why #iteration is important. Analytics have shown that #MOOCs often have poor completion rates. So find ways to design for that. And then #HGSet525, which I don't know what that is. So I responded like a snarky asshole that I am, because I'm a one-trick pony. Whenever somebody says something nasty about MOOCs, like MOOCs need more completion rates, I get very snarky, and I apologize, sort of. So I wrote, completion rates not relevant to learning that goes on in well-designed MOOCs. This is not about completion, but about learning as you go. I mean, Joyce Pope, who started 6 years ago and couldn't deal with Stein, and therefore tender meatballs instead of tender buttons. And now here she is. She confessed the other day in the kitchen here at the writer's house that she kind of likes Stein. So fuck completion rates.
Right. It would be like saying, what is the completion rate of people practicing meditation?
That's exactly what it would be like. Oh my goodness, Allie has joined us. Hey, Allie. How are you? Allie, can you hear us? Allie Castleman? She's there but can't hear us, Zach, so it's good to see Allie anyway. Yeah, completion rates are another thing. I remember a wonderful woman from Western Canada, I won't say her name, the first year was scolded by some newspaper saying, the problem with MOOCs is that nobody completes the course. And she said, well, I did the first weeks of the course intensely. Then my husband got sick. I came back in week 7. I had a great time. In year 2, I did week 7. Who's going to say I didn't complete the course? Anyway, Jeremy Dixon repeated it, and that's the shout-out to Jeremy Dixon, who next week will be coming all the way from Wales to hang out with us in London. I'm looking forward to Jeremy. Okay, second hangout, which is going to lead us to our first topic probably, and this is Ken Hay, who created a thread about Jason's poem, Connected, which is in the ModPo Plus syllabus. And the poem is fantastic. And we have a really interesting video in ModPo Plus about your poem. Mm-hmm. And so Ken starts to talk about that. And Jason, I guess you were in your office hour, you replied. And what I want to do now is quote Jason. And then I want to ask some TAs and others how they respond. And maybe Eric, you'll come and join us at the table here and respond to that? Okay, so here's part of what Jason wrote. Yes, and you have a phone call, okay. Here's part of what Jason wrote, and this is where we'll start tonight. We in ModPo have year after year engaged Dickinson's poems, and I've definitely come to feel them as much, much more complicated and unstable fields of energy. And then a little later, Jason says, close reading requires just as smelling requires nostrils. The abandonment of selfhood's self-certainty and stable orientation in space-time, the secure grid of language, as a secure and trustworthy map with all denotations singular and guaranteed. The practice of close reading, Jason continues, requires an openness to ambiguity and the unexpected, the emergent and simultaneous multiplicities in tension, contrary plausible meanings held in the mind, at the same time both gaining assent from a proximity of minds with the membrane of the poem between all of them, allowing for thought to flourish as dynamic, open collaboration through language across time and space. Did you remember you wrote this?
No, I have not.
By close reading a poem, I like to think that we expand the poem, delight the poet as the poem imagines, if not our own specific acts of readings, as she writes while reading her poem, as it emerges through a plurality of variable readers that the poet can only submit to and accept as both people she knows, her contemporaries, but also utterly other and unimaginable readers somewhere else in time. The poem is a process, the poet discovering the poem's form in the simultaneous act of both writing and active close reading of the poem by the poet in its drafts and emergence not as self but as selves which include the unimaginable possibility of us as readers of Dickinson now. Damn. So, Erica, did you follow all that? I mean, he's sort of playing right to your sweet spot there in talking about how by being a community of interpreters, we not only bring the poem into our own space and time, which makes Dickinson alive, but we also change it and change ourselves. We've said that a lot in ModPo, but we haven't said it quite this way. Do you want to react to that? And then we'll go to the phone.
I think I would just echo what Jason beautifully said, and I love your poem, Jason.
It's called Connected. It's
I'm
great.
really excited that it's in ModPo Plus, but I think that and sort of like Jason, I've never been much of a Dickinson person until ModPo, and now I feel like I have a way into her, and each time I read her, it's a different experience. And I feel like that's part of the community of readers that we were just talking about.
I mean, I suppose it's a sentimental way of putting it, Erica, but in a way what's happened to Dickinson is that someone who was little read and definitely misunderstood in her time gets to have the audience that she deserved 100+ years later in us. I mean, that's sort of patting ourselves on the back, but somebody might say, if only Emily were here to see what a great deal was made of some of these 4-line and 8-line poems.
Right. But part of what I was trying to say is, like, if we're non-Cartesian about it, we are, by reading it, we go back and are there in the room with her.
Yeah.
Like time, like time is like language is a membrane through which we can travel in time.
Yeah.
And be there with her as she's writing.
That's so great. I mean, basically, we work, when we do a close reading of the poem, out of respect to it, we work to make a presence out of an absence. The absence is the Dickinson that we think we understand her intention, or the Dickinson who was in Amherst, Massachusetts of a certain time, who essentially disappeared, and readers disappeared her, and editors disappeared her by correcting her grammar and getting out the dashes.
Right.
Anyway, that's a great way to start. Who do we have on the phone? Eric, do you want to come up and join us? Who do we have on the phone?
So conveniently enough, since we're just talking about Dickinson, it's Chris Foreman.
Chris Foreman.
Yeah.
Aha. Chris calling from Los Angeles. I knew this was going to happen. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Al. How are you?
It's good to talk to you, pal. So,
Good to talk to you, yeah.
thank you so much for continuing as a community TA and just being a great ModPo person. Thanks a lot for all that. Miss seeing you. It's been a little while.
It has been a while.
I know what your question's going to be. I kind of dared you. But before you ask your question, I just want to remind everybody of a couple of things. We're looking at Twitter here at the table, Amber Rose and I. We're also looking at the Facebook page, which is where some people are watching this stream. We're also looking at the subforum, which is called Live Webcast September 27th subforum, which is where I found Chris earlier today. And that, by the way, that subforum has some great pictures of Mama Pope and me, and Mama Pope and Lily. So join that. So we want you to be part of the conversation.
Just on
yeah.
the Facebook, I started there are a few things about today's webcast. I posted, Ambrose Johnson posted something, so make sure you put your questions there so that I know where to find them.
That sounds really good. And before Chris gets us to Dickinson, the comments from Colette Bates and T in Manila, Andy Redlam, and T again on Jason's point gives me the shivers, because what ModPo is doing with this kind of global community is exactly what this guy was describing. I mean, literally, as it's happening, the community forms around the very point that you're making. So I know I make that point a lot, but I still think it's kind of amazing, given that, 33 years later, after I got an appointment as an assistant professor at the University of Pennsylvania, and all my teaching started and ended in a single room, here we are doing something so different, but it's better. Sorry for all 33 years of alumni who thought that was good. It was good, but now it's like everybody gets to do it. Okay. All right, Chris, go ahead. I know what you're going to ask, but I want you to.
Okay, I appreciate that. I do want to just spend another moment or two on the Emily Dickinson poem that we wrote our essays on.
Okay.
And in addition to thinking a lot about it and reading a number of essays, there are a couple things I still don't feel like I have addressed or have really seen addressed.
Okay.
They are, one, I haven't really seen anybody talk about the meter or the rhyme.
Yep.
And two, I would really like some more insight on who is speaking in the quotation marks, as large as I.
Chris, do you mind? I'm going to ask you to stay on the line for a little while at least so I can ask you a question. But then at a certain point, you'll hang up so Anna can get another call. And I'm going to say the phone number because it's a different one tonight. We're using a different phone number, 484-352-2429. 484-352-2429. And that's my cell phone, so you can call me anytime. No, I'm kidding. I am so kidding. 484-352-2429. Okay, so I'm going to read the poem. And Allie, can you hear us yet? Allie Castleman?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Allie. How are you?
Hi, Al. I'm good.
Hey, it's good to see you. Allie and Max and Amber Rose, I'm going to ask the three of you to comment briefly in turn about who's speaking. And boy, oh boy, this is hard. Okay? So this is a 4-line poem written in 1864. It is not often talked about, but now it is by thousands of people. Ha ha. Love reckons by itself alone. As large as I, which is in quotes, as large as I, relate the sun. To one who never felt it blaze, itself is all the like it has. Damn. Wish I could write like that. All right, here it is again. And the question, Allie, are you able to see the text?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm glad, because this would be pretty hard to wing. Okay. Love reckons by itself alone, as large as I, relate the sun. To one who never felt it blaze, itself is all the like it has. Boy, I'm glad we live in an era of social media where the word like has really expanded, because I think there's something going on there. Okay, so Allie, I bought you a little time. Can you say who answer Chris's second question? Who's the speaker?
I'm tempted to go the easy route right now and say that on the obvious level, Dickinson is the speaker. But there's such a distanted wisdom to the poem that you could I also kind of feel like love is talking about itself in the third person.
Love might be so. Okay, those are two options. Actually, let's go down the row. Let's go to Joe Massey next. Joe, the only question is who's speaking? Just say that, and then we'll move to Max and Erica.
Well, I read it as Dickinson speaking, but as far as as large as I in quotations, that's one of the most interesting things about the poem, and I think that's still Dickinson, but it's as if that part's being spoken out loud. It's an assertion, she's kind of, to emphasize the kind of colloquial nature of the line.
Joe Massey, you get a bonus question, which is, who's the one who never felt it blaze? Ah ha ha. Who could that be?
Yeah,
Is that the object of love? The object of love?
It could be that too, yeah.
Yeah. All right, Max, your turn. Who's the speaker?
I'm also going to say it's Dickinson. I think this one is really lyrical. I want it to be her because of the power of what she's saying.
Which is to say, love is not comparable, likenable and it has to reckon itself. It's self-referential. It's
Right,
Nita,
and
it's
for
Nita,
Dickinson-
it's Nita Carrion, Lorene Nita Carrion.
And for Dickinson to say that, that's a pretty. I mean, that's very empowering. That's why I like to think it's her, and it's
Okay. I think Erica's smiling. I can't really tell because the box is small. Erica, who's?
I'm not sure I have anything to add. I agree with what Max and Joe were saying.
Okay.
I
All
want
right.
it to be
I
different.
don't agree.
Jason does not agree.
Read it. Can you read it again?
Yeah, of course I can. You want to see?
I
Love
don't wanna
reckons
see.
by itself, alone, as large as I, relate the sun. That verb,
Wait.
that's a verb.
Yeah.
Stop. Just.
Oh, sorry. As large as I, relate the sun to one, there's an internal rhyme, to one who never felt it blaze. Itself is all the like it has.
You were the speaker, weren't you? You just spoke.
You
it.
are so clever.
And
You should have more wine, but we don't have any.
I get better. The
Uh-oh.
as
Amber
large-
Rose is not humored by this.
But the as large as I is in quotes, so it is another speaker.
Yeah.
Whoever's speaking is suddenly
Yeah.
there's another speaker introduced.
The one who's in charge of the simile making,
Yeah.
right? Oh, the simile maker. I think Eric's got an inspiration. We're going to go to Amber Rose first and then Eric.
Can I ask a question?
Of course, you're allowed to do anything you
wanna
want.
deal with this relate.
Yeah.
Because, what is this weird echo? Oh, was I not loud enough?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
You're good. She does this comparing with the sun a lot in a lot of her poems. Go ahead.
Yeah, but to say that love is reckoned by itself and then to still go ahead and compare it to the sun, granted, they're both pretty massive self-referential things, but then why bring the sun into it? I wonder if the as large as I is the sun. That's what when I first read it,
That's nice.
I thought that as large as I relate the sun, because that relate could be a relation between love and the sun, or it could be the sun relating this truth, like as large as I.
Yep.
So
Yep. I rarely say this, Amber Rose. I have a discipline never to say the kind of thing I'm about to say. That's my teaching. But Chris is going to appreciate it. And Chris, we haven't forgotten about you. We're turning to you in a second. I think I know what this poem's about. I think I know. So, but Eric, since I think I know, now you're on the spot. Uh-oh, he's shaking his head.
Well, no, I'd be very interested to hear your
What
take on it.
I think it is. That's
s-
his way of saying, Al, I'm not going to be persuaded by you.
I've often been persuaded by you, Al.
How recently?
So, time is something that changes the eye. And I think the capture of the eye here may be the reflection of the self upon itself at another moment. And the relationship to love may be one that is being recaptured from another moment with the distance to talk about it.
Yeah, we're sort of on the same page. Chris, have you been hearing all this?
Yeah, I've heard it all, Al.
Okay. What do you want to say about the speaker? And what do you think of Amber's bringing us to relate the sun? How's that going?
My sense was that it was the speaker. It was a little confusing to me in that it was in quotation marks. But in some ways, I think that's the biggest claim of the poem. You know, it's saying that love is this fantastic thing we can't compare to anything. Sun is something we can't compare. And yet at the base of the whole poem is an irony, which is, the speaker has compared the two essentially in the poem. But then there's the I, and it's as large as I. So that I is, in a sense, the biggest thing, close to which the sun comes, but perhaps not quite approaching it.
Right. No, I think we're all onto this. This is a very difficult poem. So this is a bold thing. She says this in so many poems, hundreds of poems. I never experienced the sun. I think she is the one. right? The sun, if you relate the sun to one who never felt it blaze, she's basically saying, how do I relate to the sun, which I have never experienced? I mean, it's sort of in a psychobiographical way of saying I'm in the dark of the room, I'm a shut-in, but that's not really important. What's important is that she is exploring the condition of autotelism. She's exploring the condition of denotation that doesn't work. So she has this syndrome. This doesn't refer to anything, right? So like is a likening. The likening is the comparing that you're supposed to do to things in the world. And the great poetic thing, particularly from the Romantics on, was the idea that things as large as sun and moon defined us. The sun defines us because it sheds light on us. It's the only way we can see each other. The only way we understand someone else as an other and we as the self, because the sun shines on us and the bodies are separate and there's a distance. But Emily Dickinson here is basically saying likening, which is another way of saying lovening, love, like, love. O'Hara makes great puns on like, Frank O'Hara. The only like it has is the non-likening, the non-comparable. Incomparable is the word. So she is left to fumble around in a world in which the denotative language doesn't work to point to something even as large and life-giving as the sun. And she is therefore left without the power of likening. The only likening she has is the likening of someone who talks about the sun but has never experienced it. And that's the ultimate power of language. We've all been sort of saying it. Hey, Chris, what do you think?
I like that, Al. I like that a lot.
Thank you, man. Listen, thank you for calling, and I hope we're going to see you in Philly sometime. You threatened a trip, but you've never done it.
I'll make a point of it. I'm going to get out there.
And I'm coming out to L.A. in January, so let's get a meetup together.
Oh, great. Definitely. Let's
Good.
do it.
Thank you for calling, and thanks for all your work for ModPo.
Thanks.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
So I'd like to invite Amelia to come up to the table. I'm so honored that you're here, Amelia. Okay, so before we get to another call, I'd like to go around the horn and ask everyone what's their favorite poem. Jason has two, but you can only say one. Your favorite poem this week. So, Jason, pick one. Favorite poem.
Probably The Rose is Obsolete.
The Rose is Obsolete. That's pretty awesome. Okay, Joe Massey, favorite poem this week?
I'm going to pick the one that you said we wouldn't talk about, William's Lines, because I don't know. I would enjoy, I think, hearing a close reading of that poem because it seems to just be so self-explanatory, so vividly itself. I don't know how you could read into it or around it.
All right. If there's a moment in the next hour, we'll do it. So thanks, Joe. I see Dave Poplar has joined us. Hey, Dave. Dave Poplar.
Hey, Al.
Hi.
How's it going?
We're doing favorite poems. What's your favorite poem this week? Do you have you caught up?
13 Ways of Looking at a Blackboard.
Okay, that's a great poem. Allie Castleman, favorite poem this week?
The Rose is Obsolete.
The Rose is Obsolete. Wow. Okay. Erica Kaufman, Rose is Obsolete? No?
13 Ways.
13 Ways. All right. Stevens. It's neck and neck. Max, you're going to break this tie.
Also 13 Ways, but my second choice is This Is Just to Say.
You really like This Is Just to Say? Hey, Max, can you and I do Williams doing This Is Just to Say?
We can try. I feel like you have more practice than I do.
This is just to say, your turn.
I have eaten the plums. Are we doing line by line or phrase by phrase?
That's your favorite. That's cool. Okay. Amber Rose, your favorite poem this week?
Actually, This Is Just to Say is my favorite.
Whoa, I guess we should talk about it. Okay. Amelia Klein, what's your favorite poem this week?
I'm going to have to go with 13 Ways.
13 Ways. That's so cool. All right. I guess I'm going to have to weigh in. One of my favorite poems of the 20th century is The Rose is Obsolete. But I also like everything. I like Between Walls. I think that's a very fecund poem. I'll tell you poems I don't like. I'm tired of the station of the metro. Oh, okay. All right.
People
I'm
are
breaking.
they won't read them.
Anna, do we have someone on the phone?
We have some questions on Facebook.
Okay, let's turn, before we go to the phone, let's turn to Facebook. Amber Rose, what do we got?
So we had a few people that wanted to talk about the Emily Dickinson. I think that's been covered. So Jack from New Zealand has
cool.
a question about 13 ways of looking at a blackbird.
All right,
Can
let's
turn
do it.
there.
You just did a really slick move. You went to get other questions, and then you tied it back to the thing we were talking about. You're really such
I'm a
teacher
at heart.
You're
Yeah,
a teacher.
it's true. Okay, so Jack wants us to talk more about the 12th stanza that starts with "The river is moving, the blackbird must be flying."
Nice.
He's just looking to hear some different interpretations of the meaning of that stanza.
Oh, right.
Particular.
This is perfect. Okay, we're going to do this quickly. We're going to go around the horn, and then we'll take the call. So you're responding to Jack from New Zealand, and it is just about noon. It's like 11:30, almost time for lunch where Jack is.
New Zealand.
Actually, you know what? It might be later than that. It might be 1 p.m. tomorrow. That's weird. Jack, happy tomorrow. Okay, I'll read the lines, and then we'll start with Joe. The river is moving. The blackbird must be flying. Joe, what do you do with that, real quick?
I love that couplet. I see it as the river is moving because the blackbirds were reflected on the river. So it's
That's
playing
it,
with
isn't it? Yeah.
reflection.
Whoa, Joe, that's really great. Erica, what do you think? The river is moving. The blackbird must be flying. I love must be.
I also see a reflection.
Okay.
And the idea that the bird's in motion just like water's in motion.
I like the way Stevens, thank you both. I like the way Stevens is interested in indirect perception, right? Because he has all kinds of intuition about things that are happening. And this poem is all about slight, nuanced change, the slight shifting, slight motion. And not just visuals, but there's some sound occasionally. So that's really cool. Okay, Max, what does this 2 lines do for you?
I love the way he lifts out of this the motion of the river being this kind of something that's sort of constant and sort of big and really hard to grasp and imagine, right? I mean, it's all rivers are always moving, right? The water is
right.
all over, and then he makes it about something so specific.
Yeah, I think Eric's
just the
probably
way that zooming in on something.
Yeah,
that's what I like.
Eric's probably the one in the room who knows the rhetorical term for this or the grammatical term, but the verb form is moving. Am I putting you on the spot? You probably don't know what it's called, but that kind of something present, the ongoing present. Amelia, ongoing present. We have PhDs, right? We should be able to do. The river
I think it's continuous present, right?
Continuous present. Thank you. Sorry, this just shows that we need to do this. It takes a village to do grammar. The river is moving, Max. The river is moving, meaning that could mean right now it is moving and sometimes it doesn't, but it could also mean this is the truistic fact. Right?
The river moves.
Rivers move by definition.
No, they don't.
Yeah, it is fact.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. But then the next one is must be flying, which is not the same as the continuous present. And there's the slight change. All right, let's go to Allie. Allie, what do you do with those 2 lines?
Max said that he sees it as a kind of zooming in. I think I see it as a kind of zooming out for a related reason, that the river is always moving. There's always a blackbird flying somewhere. The earth is one in some way, connected, continuous.
That's really great. We're really putting together a nice reading here. Maybe we'll clip this and add this video to ModPo Plus. I think that would be good. So Dave, I mean, this is, 13 Ways is kind of a philosopher's poem, isn't it?
Well, it's certainly multi-perspectival. And I just wanted to say one thing before it left my head, but let's not forget the word must here, because I see this as sort of a pantomime of nature in action, but the word must really cements the fact that you cannot separate this blackbird from nature. Mm-hmm. So just wanted to point that out.
That's really smart. Thank you. Amber Rose, any thoughts on this couplet?
Yeah, I was also going to say something about the must, and particularly that the must for me is signaling contingency. So the river is the blackbird's motion is contingent upon the river's motion, and if we can depend on rivers to always be moving, there's a kind of security in the kind of rhythmic the continuous present that we're talking about.
That's so interesting.
There's a certain comfort in that.
You read must be as a kind of solace, consolation, a surety.
Yeah.
And that's so I like that, and I'm persuaded now. You said that brilliant thing, but I've always thought of it as somewhat anxious, like he's almost protesting too much, like he's trying to prosecute this blackbird, like it must be flying. I've deduced that it's flying. I don't know, but I really like what you said.
Yeah, I think that my reading is also a little bit informed by what's going to happen in that final stanza. It was evening all afternoon. Granted, I'm moving out of that couplet. I don't know if that's...
No, that's fine.
That's whatever. Fine. But it was evening all afternoon. I love that line.
You do? I think, oh, God, it's like a bad Bob Dylan line. It was evening all afternoon. Sorry. We were younger then, now we're older. No, it's the other way around. We're older, but we were... Anyway, I'm sorry. That was really rude.
All right, my point is made.
QED. Amelia, it's not like this at Colgate.
It isn't.
They're not sitting around at Colgate talking like this.
Most of the time, no. I'll admit that. I read it as a kind of riddle, and going back to your point that this is a philosopher's poem in some ways, it has the form of a syllogism. So this is to your point about contingency. Right. If X, then Y.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if the river is moving, then the blackbird must be flying. But of course, at the end of the poem, the blackbird is sitting. Right. So I think it does. It's riddling. It's almost like a Zen koa, and it kind of provokes the anxiety of having articulated that necessity. Well, there's no restfulness for the mind that is constantly tracking this blackbird and trying to figure out what to make of it.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can resolve that.
Yeah.
That syllogism. Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, there's a certain liminality, like a permanent liminality. I mean, no, that doesn't work.
No,
it's paradox.
Yeah, a kind of liminality.
Permanent liminality that I think we're experiencing in the darting eye, trying to catch this blackbird. So the must be flying. It was evening all afternoon is about staying in that liminality and staying in the discomfort of not being able to rest.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy, right? And that again, the indirect perception that you meant that sense that. There goes that blackbird again, kind of at the edge of my awareness. Right?
Yeah, I've seen that Hitchcock movie, The Blackbirds.
Right.
Kathy D, in Twitter, the river is moving, the blackbird is flying. The poem is a drone looking at it from all angles. I don't think she means drone like that awful thing that's probably circling overhead right now.
Are you sure?
I mean, she may, but the idea is the poem is a drone in the sense of there is a kind of Olympian omniscience that Stevens has despite the cubistic dividing it into 13 different ways. There's something very look downishness, looking down uponishness, and all eyes are on things.
Can I talk for say
Yeah,
something
Jason.
about it?
Yeah.
I've always, since high school, when I read it, I think when I was like a sophomore, I've always despised this poem. Like
because of the way it was taught you?
Tell us what's
No,
in
it
your
wasn't
heart.
taught me. I bought a book of Wallace Stevens, and I was like, yeah, I love this poem. Yeah, I love this poem. And I was like, oh, I hate this poem. And I don't. It feels like a Where's Waldo book. Like, where's the stupid blackbird? Like, I don't give a shit about the blackbird, and I feel like it's like a little like children's puzzle, like which letter in this stanza is the blackbird and the others are just letters.
It's just like High Life magazine.
Right, it's like Highlights magazine. And I just want to get,
Well,
I think
you're
it's for...
wrong, but that's okay.
All right, I'm taking a contrary position,
No, I mean,
position
you're doing a
for
great job of it.
heuristically contrary position.
Yeah.
But I...
There are moments when it becomes a kind of parody of cubistic modernism, like a man and a woman are one, a man and a woman and a blackbird are one.
That's
Is laughable.
gross.
That's laughable. Like it's a threesome with a blackbird?
Yeah, there's like John Waters films
What's
where
wrong
there are
with sex?
threesomes with a chicken.
Didn't we have this conversation last time?
How many blackbirds do you need to bake into a pie, is my question. Is it 13? We need 11 more. 4 and 20.
4 and 20. Thank you, Joyce. Well, we have ground this thing to a halt, but that's okay. It was really good. Do we have someone on the phone?
We do, and the good news is the phone caller, our good friend Philip Drexler, your evocation of the cubistic nature of this poem relates really nicely to what he wants to talk about, which is Duchamp's Nude Descending Staircase.
Okay.
So we can keep going on this
All right.
this fun
Philip,
cubist
can
thing.
you hear me? Phil?
Hello?
Hey, Philip, can you hear me?
I sure can, Al.
How are you, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing fine.
Good. How are
I'm
things?
off to a little bit of a slow start on ModPo this year, mainly because I've been taking Lily Applebaum's fabulous first solo book club on poet Patricia Lockwood this last week.
And guess
which
where
is just
Patricia
wrapping
Lockwood
up.
is on this very night?
I know I didn't get to hear it because I don't have Flash on my phone, so I'll have to hear it later.
Well, she was here,
Unfortunately.
she was here. She gave a reading, and we recorded it, of course. So, how about that?
I know. I'll hear it later.
Phil, what I want you to do is ask your question.
Okay.
And then we're going to ask you to hang up, and we'll take the next call, and we'll answer it, and you can watch the answer online.
Okay. Well, it's more in the form of an observation, but you can kick it around if you want to.
Okay. Yep.
It has to do with the images and the nude descending a staircase.
Yep. The painting by Duchamp.
Duchamp. Yeah. When I took American Lit in college, I remember we did Red Wheelbarrow, and the professor asked, what does this seem like to you? And my answer was, it seems like a tableau.
Yes, that's good. That's a good answer.
In the theater, they do the stop action, and the actors stand in one place.
Yes.
But they're not really frozen because they're still moving. There's still motion there. And I saw a movie recently, Al, and it really brought home to me when I saw Nude Descending a Staircase, where Duchamp really probably got the idea for that painting, because it's a movie called Dawson City Frozen Time, and they discovered this treasure trove of silent films
Yes.
that got buried in the frozen tundra in Dawson City, Canada, 100 years ago.
Well, actually, Philip, let me just interrupt for a sec. The source is Muybridge's Motion Studies, which is probably similar to the films you're talking about, but I think the lineage has been pretty clearly set out.
Right, but my point is, they found this trove, and they showed clips from these 352 films that they found.
Yeah.
And so and because of the technology at the time, when the actors move, they all leave a tracer of movement.
Ah, yeah.
And it was the same with still photography.
Yeah.
They had to put them in clamps and stuff because the slightest little movement left a tracer of movement.
Right.
And so that's how they saw people, even when they were supposedly still in a photograph.
Yeah,
in a photograph, they saw them as tracers of movement.
Right. And what you're saying,
I'm sure that quite influenced what Duchamp was doing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it influenced the imagists too in what they were doing, because they were writing at the same time.
Yeah. What I'm going to do, Philip, is I'm going to get everybody's reaction to this. A couple of interesting points here. One is the paradox of imagism itself, and I hope we'll get into the maybe people around the table can talk about the success or failure of imagism as a movement. But the paradox of imagism is that it seems to be all about still lives and stilling things, such as the encounter by Pound, kind of infamously. At the same time, there's motion in it. We just looked at the Blackbird poem where there's constant motion. So, Philip, nice to hear from you. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Al.
Listen to our response, and we'll talk to you soon.
Indeed. Thank you.
All
Good
right.
night.
Fantastic. So, Nude Descending a Staircase, we have this famous cubistic painting. And what's it doing in a chapter on imagism? It's not imagistic, it's cubistic. So I guess I'm asking you why I put it here. What does it have to do with what we're talking about? So let's go to Joe on this. Joe, I know you've thought a lot about the image. Would you comment on Nude Descending Staircase, or this whole problem of imagism being about things that are stilled?
Yeah, it's hard for me to read cubism into the Red Wheelbarrow.
Right.
The image in the Red Wheelbarrow is what it says it is, and so much depends upon that couplet. Is Williams telling us how to read the poem? It's sort of it's kind of almost a manifesto to me of.
Yeah. Well, in ModPo, the Duchamp, the painting is not paired with the Wheelbarrow poem. It's Fountain that's paired with the Wheelbarrow poem.
Yeah, there are Williams poems that are obviously cubistic, especially when he starts playing with syntax and kind of disrupting.
Well, the Rose is obsolete.
Completely coming together. Yeah, exactly. But the Red Wheelbarrow, no, I think this is just a. I love the poem. I mean, but it's it is what it says it is.
Max, when we get to week 5 at the very end, chapter 6. We get to a poem by X.J. Kennedy called Nude Descending a Staircase. I'm putting you on the spot. Do you remember the controversy in ModPo about that poem?
Yeah, it's the poem gathers the image together at the end, right? That's
right.
The controversy is that it takes, in a really lame way, it takes the title of a rather experimental, kind of explosive painting and then makes it something really dumb and crass.
So what it does is it causes us to retroactively define modernism. And I guess what I'm going to ask anybody here to do is to try to define modernism as we get it in Nude Descending a Staircase. Holy cow, you had no idea I was going to do this. Okay, Erica, teacher, how would you use the Nude Descending a Staircase to define modernism? Just throw a definition out. Get us started.
Can I go back to imagism?
Yes.
So I could imagine using a Nude Descending a Staircase to think about HD.
Yep.
And to think about
people in the room are approving of that. People here are approving of that.
So I could imagine thinking about the way that the longer you sit with an image, the more it shifts, as being not all that far from the sort of abstraction you see in the Duchamp.
Yep. Good. Okay, who else wants to take a stab at defining modernism? Okay, Jason.
Well, it's a temporal thing, isn't it? To be modern and not to modernism is a kind of place where every moment is different from the next, and every moment is new.
As
And
opposed to pre-modern representation, which is less likely to do what, or is more likely to do what, as compared to what you just described?
It's likely to reference the eternal.
Either that or ignore motion.
Ignore
and sort of
motion and
get
be,
it right.
Right, get it right and be perfectly. It's taxidermy. Like it's
Right.
perfectly, permanently fixed.
Such as portraiture, right? So we have a poem this week, Amelia, that's a portrait of a lady, William Carlos Williams. Maybe this is the right moment to turn to that.
Yeah.
So Portrait of a Lady is a portrait that never gets going. It's a portrait that's angry at itself, right? Do you have it in front of you? So do you want to say something about that? I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, sure. I'll say something
It's
about
very
it.
similar to the Duchamp, I think.
Yeah, well, it's a poem that is rife with the frustration of in the inherited idioms, right? That new descending a staircase. Okay, I should know what that looks like, right? If I have any sort of acquaintance with the history of Western art and how people depicted nudes or staircases, but that's not what you get when you look at Duchamp's painting. And there's a sense that there's a need to kind of explode the ground, or point out the artificiality of what we are accustomed to thinking of as mimetic representations of the real.
Right.
And to point out those inadequacies, which in Williams' poem takes a fairly humorous turn as the poet kind of I read it as kind of quarreling with himself or with his medium.
Saying, you're an idiot. You don't know how to do this. Well, let's continue. Well, you're an idiot. You don't know how to do this. That's modern. There's a definition of modernism that fits perfectly with Nude Descending a Staircase. I am going to try to do a portrait because we all have this traditional instinct of depiction, but you can't do that. You're not going to do that well. Let's listen. Chris, I'm going to put up Williams. We have 3 recordings of Portrait of a Lady. I'm just going to pick the first one. Let's see what happens. That's not working. There we go.
Your thighs are apple trees whose blossoms touch the sky. Which sky? The sky where Watteau hung a lady's slipper. Your knees are a southern breeze or a gust of snow. Ah, what sort of man was Fragonard, as if that answered anything? Ah, yes, below the knees, since the tune drops that way, it is one of those white summer days. The tall grass of your ankles flickers upon the shore. Which shore? The sand clings to my lips. Which shore? Petals, maybe. How should I know? Which shore? Which shore? I said petals from an apple tree.
What's happening there, Anna?
So I think, Al, this is one of the very rare. I know you and I have talked about this. How much Williams often disappoints us when he reads his own poems. How he's like not really that great of a reader of his own poems.
He's not fully committed to what he's done. Yeah.
I would say this is an exception. I think he actually does a really phenomenal performance of the poet second guessing himself as he's writing.
He's annoyed at himself. It's a little like the stupid nose poem, the smell poem.
Yeah.
It's not stupid, but it's a trick.
Yeah.
Right? This is very similar. He's saying, why are you such a jerk? Why are you doing this portrait of a lady? That's what they used to do. But we're moderns, and you're not supposed to do that. Oh, but I'm tempted. Oh, but I'm appetitious. Oh, but I like depicting women. No, you can't do it that way. Nobody does it that way anymore, as Ashbery says. You can't say it that way anymore. Which shore? You're an idiot. What are you comparing her to? Comparisons don't work anymore. It's a little like that Dickinson poem that's interested in incomparability. But he has this temptation, because he's so appetitious, to compare. I just love this. And if you want a definition of modernism, there it is. It's the stifling of the impulse to do the traditional denotation and the traditional narrative and the traditional description and the traditional lyric and the traditional comparing, liking, and the stifling of it, and then showing the stifling in action, showing the work as it happens. Okay, who do we have on the phone? Amber Rose. She's on the phone.
No, it's fine. Okay, no, I do have something to say. I think yes to everything you just said about modernism, but also can we say that there's something about recognizing that art, in terms of the new Descending a Staircase,
yes,
or a poem or whatever it is always going to be, because of its mode, necessarily abstract. So the desire to continue to try to wed yourself to the referent, to the referent,
yes,
to the real, is always necessarily going to
yes,
fail.
Yes.
Because of the
yes,
mode, because of the medium, because it is not the real. So modernism is
about how language doesn't work.
Right. So modernism is about realizing, like, oh, this is art, so I'm never going to be able to
yes,
reproduce the referent.
Yes.
So fuck the referent. I'm just going to
Yes.
go do this other shit over here.
Yes.
All right, that's what I had
And
to
the
say.
great thing, I mean, no, that's so great. And the great thing about modern art, the visual art in the museums, is standing next to someone at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, looking at the urinal. You stand next to them for an hour, and people go through, and they'll say things like, "But it's a urinal. I gotta go." Or "It's upside down," or "Why did he sign it? Ha ha ha." What's happening there is good rather than bad to me. Because what's happening is people are saying, wait a minute, a urinal can be art. This is worth a lot of money. He signed it. Wow, I can do that. Instead of I can do that being derogatory, I can do that as a Bernadette Mayer thing. Like, you can all write sonnets. Stop being so stifled by the sonnet form. Just write sonnets, and you've written a sonnet.
Yeah. So breaking out of the bounds of realism or traditionalness.
So good. It gets me so excited about this period, because this period at the beginning of the 20th century was this, it was the liberation from the narrative responsibilities and the denotative responsibilities and the lyric responsibilities and the tradition of depiction to say, it's a poem. It's not a thing. A woman on the canvas, it's not a woman. It's paint.
Yes.
And I can do stuff with it. Okay, that's really good. Who do we have on the phone?
So this time our transition is not quite so smooth, but it's fine because it's our dear, dear friend, CTA extraordinaire, Allison Borkowski.
Oh,
Allison. She's calling. She wants to talk about HD.
That's great.
Awesome.
Okay, so people in the Hangouts, get ready. We're going to go to you. Hey, Allison.
Hey, Al.
How are you? Oh, it's good to hear your voice. So just for people who don't know who Allison is, she's Borkowski in the forums. I still don't know why you just use your...
They know me.
We know you.
Gender neutral. It's just gender neutral, that's all.
And you have
Which
moved.
brings me to my point. Yes, I live in California.
The last
with
we
my
checked
dear
with
friend.
you were living at Penn State.
I know. They took me away. Well, sorry to say this, but post-election, I'm glad to be on this side of the Sierras, if I can be totally honest.
This side of the Sierras. But, I mean, it may be great to be there politically, but what happens if you just break off into the sea?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's okay. We know how to swim. And I
Okay.
have plenty of sea roses around.
All right. Well, Joyce sort of switched places with you. She came here because it's very stable around here. Anyway.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah. Allison, you want to talk about HD?
Yeah, I know we're running out of time, but I just wanted to, this is just to say that I have really struggled approaching HD, and I guess my question to the audience is, sometimes I find, even though I am a woman, that sometimes I am a little bit intimidated by female poets. And so I've always naturally moved towards Allen Ginsberg. I've always naturally moved towards William Carlos Williams, et cetera, et cetera. But this year I made super hard effort. I even made a post about how I don't get HD. And I've had a couple of awesome responses from people in the forums that have said, think of it as being a woman, or think of it as this, this is the angle that they came at it from. And some of that instruction was critical for me to come full circle on sea roses, and I can fully say I am a fan. And while the rose may be obsolete, the sea rose certainly is not.
Oh,
for me.
cool. Well, that was really well said. Allison, I think what we're going to do is we're going to respond, and we'll have you hang up and listen to the webcast so we can get another caller in 484.
Awesome. That way I can listen. I can't do two things at once, Al.
That's true. Listen, good luck in your new job. Is it going well?
Hey, thanks. Oh, it's great. Hey, I've actually been doing it for a year, and I'm working for Penn State online, so I'm still faculty there.
Oh, that's cool. And
So if the stars align, I may end up making it somewhere close to the Kelly Writer's house this fall.
Oh, good. I would love to see you back here. And Anna's very smiley about that. And thanks for all of your efforts. I mean, you're one of those people who just really keeps ModPo going with your effort. And I just want to make clear to everybody that this is a voluntary thing.
ModPo helps me go, too.
That's cool. Thank you, Allison.
Thanks, Al. Talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Okay, so let's go to the Hangouts. We've got Joe, Eric, Max, Allie, Dave. Joe, can we start with you? So HD's C Rose. I mean, Allison left it wide open. I guess she just really wants us to talk about how one approaches HD. She had some trouble with it. Now she's into it. What is it that's so great about HD, the C Rose? I mean, I would imagine, Joe Massey, that this kind of poetry would very much appeal to you. Yes?
Yeah, I've always loved HD's early, truly imagist work, but that's sort of where I stop with HD. And there aren't that many of these early imagist poems. I forget the title of that first volume of hers, but it's a pretty slim volume. And then the rest of her work, the long...
There were some poems that she wrote that never got collected that are similar to this. So I would say there's a total of maybe 30 or 40. And then there are those Greek translations. Yeah. There's some Sappho-like translations. And when we go to London next week, we're going to be doing a meetup on Saturday is it at Birkbeck? I can't remember. Yeah. And we're going to be doing a giant collaborative close reading of a poem called Moonrise by H.D. That's one of those that not a lot of people know about. Anyway, so what is it about C Rose that you like?
The clear, the hard-edged language, the line breaks. I like all of the commas in the first stanza, just the rhythm of it, the stopping and starting, kind of like perception itself, noticing things blurring into each other, things becoming clear.
There is a stopping, starting. I'm going to read.
It really does.
I'm going to read the first stanza.
It does what pound.
So sorry, we're tripping over each other. I'm going to read the first stanza, and then you can comment on the starting, stopping, hesitation thing. She seems to be taking 2 steps forward and 1 back to try to really get this right. So she says rose and then harsh rose, as if she thought maybe I ought to add harsh. And to me, that is very much a new descending a staircase, if you're really going to be abstract about it, right? Because basically it's a step forward and then another step and a kind of rose, harsh rose, marred with stint of petals, meager flower, thin, sparse of leaf. I'm going to keep going. More precious than a wet rose, single on a stem. Joe, what do you hear there?
Well, in the next line, you were caught in the drift, and it's the drift of perception, seeing one thing and seeing another, and making these mental notations as you go along. But she puts it in beautiful
I would say it's music. I would say it's as close as poetry gets to music. Allie Castleman, what do you like about what HD is doing there? It's pretty striking and very different from the poetry of its time, for sure.
I love that the vocabulary that she uses, words like harsh, stint, thin, meager, sparse.
Yeah, crisp.
In the
acrid.
collection of those and in the form of it, and even in how thin the poem looks on the page, she is herself. The poem is so much more of a sea rose than a rose. And certainly if you think of the rose as being connotated with what everyone was concerned with before modernism.
That's really brilliant. I mean, Allie, you were edging close to saying that it's a concrete poem. The poem is, in a way, a meager flower thin. The poem is kind of that acrid single on a stem. And there's a certain concreteness about it that's really, really good. Okay, cool. That's very cool. Erica, do you want to add something to that?
So this is the poem I had in mind when I was thinking about the Duchamp.
Yeah.
And admittedly, like, I came to HD pretty late. I like her later stuff a lot better. But what I see in a poem like this is this slow development of an image that continues to undo itself. And I also feel like she's doing some pretty smart and, dare I say, feminist things with the idea of a rose and, you know, like her hesitation before she really begins to develop what the poem is about.
It's a sister
I feel like she's
poem.
asserting something that's between genders almost.
Yeah. I think it's a sister poem to the wacky Week 4 poem by the Baroness, where she has that moment, but the Baroness does, when she mocks the Valentine romanticism of A Dozen Roses. Not say it with roses, she says, say it with bolts, right? The Baroness, which is a sort of Dada version of this, where she's saying, look, I'm not into the American Beauty rose, HD is saying. She's saying, look, if we want to talk romantic roses, it's going to have to be a harsh rose, stinted rose. This is not the same kind of rosy love. This is harsh. We're at the shore. We're being slammed by the ocean. You are lifted in the crisp sand. You know, so this is a kind of anti-romanticism, in a small r, anti-sentiment. So I do think there's a feminism in that, for sure. Max, your thoughts on this quickly?
I really like Erica's reading of the hesitation. That hadn't occurred to me before in all the years of reading this. The almost false start of Rose, harsh Rose. Like, I know she's doing a sort of almost a pastiche of a kind of ode, right, to by saying the name twice, but it almost reads as a false start, as this hesitation. She needs to work herself into it until she gets into that second stanza where she can start making these evaluative statements, like the rose being more precious than the wet rose.
I think, Max, that there's an underside to imagism that kind of contradicts imagism's devotion to the static image, which is all this stuttering. There's so much inarticulateness planned, in this case, in the HD case, absolutely strategic stuttering and malutterance that it just flies in the face of the perfect comparison that you get in the Metro poem, for instance. That's the side. The Rose is Obsolete, Portrait of a Lady, Sea Poppy, Sea Rose. 13 Ways is kind of like a stuttery poem. Like, I don't know which blackbird image I can do. I'm going to give them to you all. Nude Descending a Staircase. Even Lines, which we're not going to get to tonight. Sorry, Joe, but Lines. It's like just two lines, but it can't make up its mind as to whether artificiality or nature is green. So there's a lot of that kind of rejection of smooth talk, which of course was the late Victorian and Edwardian mode of the smooth talking poet. Okay, we don't have somebody on the phone. That's good, because what we're going to do... Yeah, you want to say something quick about Sea Rose? Yeah, please.
Well, I think it's important to think about the image. I mean, to have an imagist movement in text is inherently a paradox, and so I've always loved the consonants in this poem, which prevent it from the poem keeps getting stuck. Like it is. If it's like a photograph, it's a sonic photograph.
Yeah, sonic photograph. That's really good. What I want to do is we're going to go get final words from everybody. Amelia, I wonder if you would swap with Mama Pope so Mama Pope can be at the table and do a final word for us. But Amber Rose, let's you and I look at Facebook and Twitter to see if there's some interesting things we can quote or share. And I'll also look at the subforum. What do you see there?
So Andy Redlum has been really active on the Facebook. Shout out
Twitter,
to you,
too.
Andy. Oh, and Twitter.
Yeah.
The double whammy.
Yeah, double whammy.
Andy's last comment was also that there might be a resilience that we can read in the sea rose that's non-existent in the spice rose at the end. I like the idea of thinking about the sea rose as resilient in the midst of the wind and the crisp sand and being kind of pulled into the undertow and still deciding to be beautiful anyway. So that's the last word. There was a question. Okay, I'm not going to ask this question.
Right.
Ivana, I saw your question. Come to my office hours tomorrow morning, and we can talk about it.
There's a plug. Amber Rose has office hours. I also have an office hour from 7 to 8 a.m., which is not too many hours from now. Yikes. Okay, and some really nice things on Twitter. Sanjeev, who's one of the great ModPoers, what an amazing webcast full of quotable quotes. Kathy D, note to self, work on HD more. And Cindy McMillan, who I believe is in Canada and is definitely one of the rookies of the year. She's just on fire here in ModPo. Hi, Cindy. Question, aren't some poetic choices not only for meaning, but also to enhance euphony? In other words, to please the internal ear. Yes, Cindy, yes, yes, yes. If we suggested otherwise, woe is us. Absolutely. In fact, ModPo is all about poetic choices that are not about semantic sense. That is it. And here's a good chance for me to cheerlead, because next week is Gertrude Stein, week 4, chapter 2.3 and 2.4. Chapter 2.3, half of week 4 is Gertrude Stein, and the other half is the Baroness Elsa von Freytag-Loringhoven, a little bit of Tristan Zara, and a weird poem by John Peel Bishop, which kind of has a punchline which we won't say. This is hard stuff. This is where the people bail on us. This is where even Joyce Pope, who hung on tenaciously that first year, thought, what the F? No way. Stein, please, if you trust us, if you think ModPo is cool, if you think this is good, please stay for Stein. It's gonna be okay. So, okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna collect final words from everybody real quick, and then I have a couple of shout outs at the end and we'll be done. So, you wanna go first, Joyce?
Sure. I just want to talk about the sea rose, because the poem talks a lot about the rose. She tries to convince us that the rose is not like the roses I grow in my garden.
Right.
But what she did say to me was that they're sturdy. And even my rose bushes at home, I've hacked away at them, but they always come back. And that's what I feel about the sea rose, that it's strong.
Yeah, roses are tougher than you think. They all seem like they're so delicate, but actually they're pretty hard to mess up. Joyce, this is an opportunity for us to say thank you for making the trip. Thank you for being a ModPoer for all these years. Thank you for bringing your wonderful Therese to us. Thank you for making the trip and making meatballs, tender meatballs.
And hang on,
they were
folks.
Great.
Hang on, folks. Here comes Gertrude.
Yeah, all right. She's on the Gertrude bandwagon. Amber Rose, final thought, final word of any kind? Did you have fun tonight?
I did. I did. I'm a little tired. This tea was great. I didn't have wine. That's okay. My final word, be modernist. And by that I mean, don't feel inhibited by the strictures of the real. Let your imagination fly.
Oh, right. I love that definition of modernism. Modernism gets a bad rap. I mean, essentially, it is about freeing oneself from suppressive restriction tradition. Yeah, these people were free, briefly anyway. Jace, thank you, Amber Rose. Jason, final thought?
I want to say that the meatballs made my week. They were, and
in a literal sense.
Literal, and I also
They were
sampled the meatballs in San Francisco, and there was like they were slightly.
You were in San Francisco.
Yeah, I was in San
That's
Francisco.
so funny.
Then.
You were doing readings.
I just show up, but but there was a slight. Was there a slight difference to the recipe? Because I almost feel like that there was more fresh, like maybe more basil.
I always change the recipe.
You do?
It's like a poem that you write.
Exactly.
Well, when I was creating here, it was
Right.
a modern collaboration.
It's a modern meatball.
That's it.
There's nothing like making meatballs at the writer's house, I have to say.
Yes.
But I just want to say for the record, because I want this to be, this is like a full disclosure. Mama Pope gave me 2 bags of frozen meatballs that I brought home. So I'm going to be eating. I'm not really that much of a meat eater, but for the next 2 weeks, meatballs every night. And Max, aren't you jealous of that? Max, final thought? Final word?
I have nothing to eat here in Chicago. I'm salivating.
You know, I feel like
at the
we
thought
should
of
do the Dada thing of throwing meatballs at the screen.
Yeah, just my.
Right, or
We need to send them frozen ones.
You know, you're going to get, I mean, she mailed me meatballs that first year. Do you remember that?
I remember that.
You were here, yeah.
Yes,
Mama
overnight.
Pope, I can give you my address in a less public forum.
If like 20 ModPoers could volunteer to send Max
One meatball
one
each.
meatball each.
Max, should we? All right, this is like, remember when Soupy Sales said to his large audience, send me money? What I'm saying to you now, everyone who cares about Max, I mean, Max is an original ModPoer.
Mm-hmm.
He's such a good guy. He could use something. Everybody send Max, find out where he lives, and send him stuff. Okay, Max, do you have a final thought?
Please don't send me anything too alarming. I'll be on the lookout. That's my final thought.
Thank you, Max. You're brilliant tonight. Listen, by the way, that meetup,
Fear of what is to come. So.
that meetup you had in Chicago was great, and you produced a couple of videos that we're stitching together, and we'll be adding it soon to the ModPo site.
Yes, please take a look at our close reading of the anecdote of the jar when it's available, Al. I'm sure you'll.
I will
let
announce it.
me and others know.
Yep.
It was great. We had a great time. I hope that the sound and video quality are good.
Yeah, they could be better, but you'll get it worked out.
Yeah, I know.
And let's make sure that everybody knows the best thing about ModPo. I mean, these webcasts are fun, but the best thing is to have meetups. Eric, shout out to Eric, who's been doing meetups for years. The best thing about ModPo is meeting in your locality. Don't wait for us to show up in Manila or Alexandria or Cape Town, although we should go to all those places because we have ModPo people in all 3 of them. Do it yourself. Get together. Hang out on Saturday. The DC people have been doing it for 6 years. It is so much fun to use this structure to have a book club, basically, except talk about a poem. Okay, so let's go to Erica Kaufman. A final thought?
My final thought is, Max, I want to send you a care package, is number 1. Number 2 is, please hold on for Stein. I promise Stein is the best thing that you will ever experience. Wow. And if you want to talk about it, I have office hours tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Great. Go Stein. Stay with us. Once we get past Stein, and it still gets weird in ModPo, but I think Stein is like an initial shock of refusal to denote. Peak weirdness. And peak weirdness. So
No, the peak. You get. It doesn't. It like we got to Stein.
Yes.
And we continued to descend.
Something like that.
Stein is kind of like the reward.
Yeah, I think so. Allie Castleman, it is great to see you. And I know daytime.
It's so good to see you guys.
Daytime webcasts are hard for you, but I'm glad to see you tonight. Final thought?
Yeah, I guess my piece of advice in approaching Stein would basically be to treat the language like, just let yourself let yourself just run, like treat it as though you're eating Mama Pope's meatballs and just like let your senses pour all over it. And like, don't worry too much for your first and second and third readings of like getting something semantic out of it, because so much of what's great about it is just the taste. It's pretty delicious.
That is really a great suggestion. Fantastic. Dave Poplar, final thought?
I got on late tonight because I was at a seminar, but in that seminar, just a couple hours ago, the professor was referring to another philosopher, and she said he contained multitudes. So I just wanted to share
There's
that.
Whitman. That's a good way to leave us. Following up on Allie's point, a quotation from Matthew Bavis in the cover of Poetry Magazine this month. Poetry is, among other things, a reminder that bewilderment may be a bequest. Up with bewilderment. And Joe Massey, final thought.
It might be because I'm tired and slightly delirious, but I just keep thinking about meatballs descending a staircase.
They kind of roll, don't they?
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that. We're all a little loopy. We're all a little hungry. Anna Strong Safford, final thought.
I just want to echo the sort of cheering for the real fun, I think, and mind melt that is Stein. And if you do what Allie said and sort of give yourself to the language, I think you can have a really good experience. And the difference is spreading.
The difference is spreading. I want to end with two shout-outs. Bob Zaslow, he said he's enjoying ModPo, and I asked him why and how. He's a retired teacher. He likes the way that I work with the TAs. You are the epitome of excellence in education. I'm sorry I read that. That's a little too outrageously positive. But after the first close reading discussion, I got so excited about how your astute and highly intelligent group felt safe enough to be able to talk with assurance about their own interpretations. Since that first time, I've looked at poetry with fresh eyes. And suddenly, after all my years as a student, a teacher, a writer, suddenly poetry has taken on a new vibrant meaning. And not just as a series of academic exercises. I've been inspired by almost every poet, every poem, in one way or another. Then I'll watch the discussions and new areas of thought bloom open. It's so damn exciting. So even though this is an extremely hectic time for us, because we're getting ready to move from New York State to Washington State, I still managed to carve out at least an hour a day for ModPo. And as I said, I'm loving every minute of it. Thank you, Al. And please thank all your TAs. And I asked Bob about Washington State, and he sent me, posted, it's in the forums, a picture of the house where he and his wife are moving to. Oh, I want to move in. It's so beautiful. Bob, I'm inspired by the fact that you're doing this course for free, non-credit. You're in the middle of a move, and you're carving out an hour a day for us, and you're so positive, and it's like, it makes teaching paradise to teach people like you. And finally, a shout out to Neil Flatman. Now, Neil goes by a nickname. It's not Neil, like Flatty, Flatman. Anyway, sorry, I'm going to call you Neil because I can't remember. You're in Singapore. Neil is in Singapore. A round of applause, or maybe clicks, seem more appropriate, to Al and everyone others who created ModPo as an experiential learning zone. He says he enjoys the process of expanding my knowledge so much I'm considering taking a low-res MFA. As a result of ModPo? That's scary. Although travel from Singapore will make it tricky. Well, that's why they call it low-res. None of these things would have seemed possible to me 30 years ago. Had the experiential learning model been around back then, I have no doubt I would have stayed in education and life would have looked different. I'm not suggesting it would have been better, but my options would have been widened almost exponentially at a point in time when the more options you have, the more likely you are to choose the one you'll enjoy. So thank you once again to everyone who's involved in ModPo, which is a great example of what is possible when teaching becomes a shared process liberated from traditional constraints. And speaking of traditional constraints, Amelia Klein came from Colgate University to join us. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think applause is in order for that. Thank you, colleague from my alma mater. We know so many people in common at Colgate. Eric, as usual, Dave, Tom, Joyce, Mama Pope, thank you. Thank you so much. Amber Rose, Jason, you're the best. BEST, all caps, exclamation point, exclamation point. Joe Massey, thank you, buddy. Thank you so much. Wish you were here every week, but it's just good to see you. Erica Kaufman, thank you. Max, Allie, Dave, Anna, and trying out the Apollo 10. You know, we tonight, everything, including the phone calls, we're done simulating the craziness of what's going to happen in London when we do a live webcast in London. So Zach and Chris, snaps for those two. They are amazing. We will see you in a live webcast from London, England, next Thursday at 6:30 p.m. local time. We will write you about that. Meantime, keep writing responses, peer reviews of the first essays of that amazing Dickinson poem that we sort of took a hack at earlier tonight. What an amazing poem. Please, please write reviews, respond to your peers, respond to your colleagues. Let's do that for the rest of the week. And then I'll be writing about week 4 as it begins on Sunday. Gertrude Stein, we're all in this together. Thank you very much, and we'll see you from London.